Welcome everyone to Path of Magdalena. My name is Diane Brenneman, and it is my utmost pleasure to have with me today Shree Devi Ma. Welcome, Shree Devi.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Shree Devi Ma has been a brahmachari with the Order of Sai Ma Brahmachari for 15 years now. For the last 3 years, she has held the esteemed title of Maha Mandaleshwar. She has built a vibrant and growing community in South America. She specifically runs and teaches the Magdalena program in South America and another teaching organization, which I can't pronounce, but is translated into English as Aligned Life. She offers workshops and one-on-one coaching. And again, it is my pleasure to have her with us today. Welcome, Shree Devi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I have to say, as I was preparing for our talk today, I was thinking about how ironic it is that I think I probably spend more time working with surrender than almost any other frequency. And it is undoubtedly the one I resisted the most on the front end of this little spiritual journey. I don't think I could have been less excited about anything. Explain to me what surrender means to you and what your journey's been like in that, Shree Devi.
Yeah. Well, hearing you makes me think the most important things are that which take more of a conscious effort and impulse, right? And that's why it has the power to generate such transformation. And in preparing and writing a bit about surrender, I was contemplating how we might think of surrender as like this kind of, right? Like this kind of collapsing into this kind of resignation. Like often in the English language, we use it in that way, right? In non-spiritual context, I surrender, like I give up.
Yeah.
When actually surrender takes a great amount of will. It takes a great amount of a conscious choice to move out of a known way of being. And for me, surrender is very much about a choice in how I perceive myself in relationship to the world, to the divine. So there's a releasing of a sense of separation. As Sai Ma teaches, we're already enlightened. We are already the light. We don't need to try to be the light. We don't need to try to be divine. We don't need to try to be a being of love. We are already that. And if we don't experience ourselves as that 100% of the time, which I'm guessing is the case for you and I, Diane, and all the people watching this,
I can safely say that. Absolutely.
Right? So meaning that there is a sense that comes in of I'm separate from that. I'm separate from the divine, from God, from presence, from light, from whatever name you want to give to it. So surrender is releasing that sense of separation, is allowing myself to recognize and melt into, merge into that which is, all that is, that which I already am in a sense. So that's why I'm speaking of it in terms of a shift in perception, which allows us to move into a new state of being.
And my experience is when I shift that perception and I surrender, what's there is pure grace. No matter how dark it looked before, in that moment, then I can experience that grace. Is that what it's like for you?
Yes. Yeah. And I think the kind of what I was speaking, the impulse that it takes to practice surrender is really leading up to it. And the moment that we release that, it feels so effortless, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It feels like you're giving something up, and yet you're not.
Right.
You're giving everything that was there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And we move in Yes, we move into that kind of knowingness and sense of, as you say, the grace. And I think of so many times, I love to chant mantras, to chant sacred music, sacred hymns. And that's often my experience with chanting, where I could be in whatever resistance or blah, blah in my mind, or stories, or I need to transform this and me and that and that. And 10 minutes later, I'm like with my arms wide open, and like none of that exists, right? Now,
Right.
did I forget about it, or did it cease to exist? Because it's not really what's real. And for me, it's
Right.
not. When we surrender, we move into that which is real, and that which is unreal, meaning the temporary concepts of separation in my mind, which is what causes suffering, that sense of being separate from
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? So that
Yes.
sense of individuality is melted, is dissolved, and then I'm there, and none of that exists anymore.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's that perception that I have something to lose,
Right.
right? That creates the suffering. And I think about how surrender is defined, as you alluded to a moment ago, in the West, as like defeat,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I remember a quote from Buddha that said, basically, you can only lose something you cling to.
Mm.
And I think about that with regards to surrender, because it seems to me that oftentimes right before you surrender, there's this sense that you need to hold on to some little thing, right?
Yeah. 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 I looked up the definition of surrender because I love starting from that place. I'm fascinated by words. So I looked it up, and one of the things that I saw is cease resistance,
Ah,
right? So, which somebody might think, okay, I need to protect myself, so I need to resist. I need to resist. People are trying to control me. So when I perceive it in that way, resistance makes sense. I need to resist against something. When we look at it from the spiritual sense, we resist that kind of merging into what is, merging into the divine. The small self resists that because it means the death of the ego. It means
yeah,
the death of a sense of separation and individuality, which defines and creates the ego. So a ceasing to resist. So that's the action, if we could say, that we're taking, is like, okay, I'm not going to keep clinging or holding on. There's that, I release resistance. And I think it comes down to, like, so many of the teachings about a choice, and a
yeah,
choice from, where do I look for, as you use the word comfort, where do I look to be filled? Where do I look to be soothed at that deep level? And I remember reading once, in relationship to a teaching about surrender, this idea that when we're thirsty, all that we want is water, right? Somebody can bring us, when we're at that intense level of thirst, somebody can even bring us $1 million and we'll trade it in for a
right,
glass of water, right?
right,
We can be brought food, we can be brought entertainment,
yeah,
we can be brought whatever. All we want is water, because we know that is the only thing that will quench our thirst. And the more that we practice surrender, that's the idea, is to bring that into our relationship with the divine. Yes, I can do the things I need to do in my life, and have success and have all of this. And for the spiritual fulfillment, for that nourishing of the soul, I only look to the divine. So I take shelter in the divine to provide that to me, because I know it will only come from there. And when we know that more, from the knowledge comes a deeper yearning. So when I know, okay, all I want is a glass of water, right? So I will give up anything so I can have that glass of water. And there's that certain, like, ferocity. I don't know, maybe that's not a word.
I think it is.
Yes,
It's a great
okay.
one.
Okay,
Yeah,
great. That we bring into our spiritual practice and into our relationship with the divine. That, like, no, I won't look in other places.
yeah,
That's what brings us to fall at the feet of our master, of our soul, of the light, of the presence that we are, where we offer everything in that state of surrender, is because I know I won't be fulfilled in that way by anything else.
It seems to me that there's an intersection here between faith and surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Speak to
Yes.
that, Shree Devi.
Yes, yes, yes. I was flipping through Sai Ma's book to see what Ma's words were on surrender. And one of the first things I found where Ma speaks to be willing with faith. I thought, oh, that's a great formula, right? To kind of
Yes.
define what surrender is. There's a willingness with a faith. So for me to take shelter in the divine, for me to move into that practice, into that state of feeling that God, the divine, the presence will guide me, I have to first have a faith that exists.
Yes.
Right? I'm not going to just surrender if it's like, well, I read a book and it kind of makes sense intellectually that there's, right? It's not going to come from that place. A state of surrender will not be generated by that. So we need to have a sense of faith that there is a divine consciousness, that there is something beyond the physical body, that I am a multi-dimensional being. So that if I surrender this lower self, there is a higher self that's there, that's guiding. Yeah, so definitely faith. And then there's that willingness. Like I said, there's an impulse, there's an action. It's not, surrender is not passive. And I think that's one of the major places to distinguish the common use of the word surrender and the spiritual use of the word surrender, where there might be this sense of it's passive, it's resignation, it's giving up, it's being defeated. And here it's very active. It's a willingness, it's a moving forward, it's a going beyond, it's that yearning, like I was saying, for that which, only that which will quench my thirst.
And then don't you think the practice of that then allows an incorporation in daily life, since all of life is about change? In order to be in harmony with that, all of life has to be about surrender as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How can we go ahead?
Yeah. Finish your question.
I was just going to say, how can we incorporate this in a practical way, Shree Devi, into our daily living? What are your ideas on that?
Yeah. One that actually just comes to me in this moment is, what are we surrendering to?
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the Hindu tradition, there's the knowledge of our Ishtadeva, which is our primary representation of God that one works with to develop that relationship. And why I'm also using these different terms, you know, I often use divine. Many people feel more connected to the idea of God or of presence or of a guru, of Mary Magdalena, of Master Jesus. So what is that which connects us when we surrender? What is it that we are surrendering to? So I think that's one to contemplate, because then in becoming more aware, it allows us to cultivate that more and to deepen that relationship. And maybe it's different in different times of our life. Maybe some here are just beginning to explore working with the consciousness of Mary Magdalena. And so there's a practice there to surrender to Mary Magdalena. And then another practice is then when we are in action, to offer our actions, even as mundane as they might be, to that aspect of the divine that we are working with, that fills us, that we recognize. So I'm feeding this body, and really I recognize in that practice, as I'm taking in food, as I'm eating, that in eating and bringing into this body, it's an offering to Mother Divine. It's an offering to God. As I'm doing an action, as I'm teaching a class, as I'm getting on a meeting, right? I bring that sense of offering, a conscious choice to offer this action to the divine. So that's a way to merge this attitude, if we want to call it, of surrender into our day-to-day activities. So it's not just reserved for those moments of ecstatic chanting or sitting in meditation, but it's in our action. And so then we begin to relate to ourselves, our body, our actions, all of that as vehicles for the divine.